Groom abandons poor bride at wedding for his first love's call. What happened next will leave you speechless. The bride stands alone at the altar. Her dress is simple but beautiful, lace sleeves, a modest train, nothing extravagant. She's not the kind of woman who needs diamonds to shine. Her hands are clasped in front of her, fingers interlocked so tightly her knuckles have gone pale. The groom stands beside her, tall, handsome, expensive suit, the kind of man who looks like he was born to stand in front of crowds and be admired. Then his phone rings. Not a vibration, a full, loud ringtone that cuts through the organ music like a blade. The pastor pauses mid-sentence. The groom pulls the phone from his pocket. His face changes. Not slowly, instantly, like someone flipped a switch behind his eyes. He looks at the screen. He looks at the bride. He steps back. 300 people hold their breath. He doesn't say a word to her. Not one. He just turns and walks down the aisle, phone pressed to his ear. His voice low and urgent as he disappears through the heavy wooden doors. The bride doesn't move. She stands there, frozen, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Guests turn to each other. Whispers start like fire catching dry leaves. The pastor clears his throat, clearly unsure what to do. 1 minute passes, then 2, then 5. The groom doesn't come back. The bride's veil slips slightly. Her shoulders begin to shake. A single tear rolls down her cheek, cutting through the makeup she spent hours applying that morning. Someone in the third row gasps. A bridesmaid rushes forward, but the bride waves her away with one trembling hand. And that's when they realize this isn't a pause. This isn't a delay. This is abandonment. Public. Calculated. Cruel. What you're watching didn't begin today. It began years ago with an old story, one about pride, greed, and a man who believed love was something he could bet on. A man who thought loyalty was a game. A man who never learned the lesson whispered in the folktales told by elders over tea and candlelight. The one who plays with the heart of another is sharpening a knife for their own future. This is the story of Sarah Williams and Michael Sterling. And by the time it's over, you'll understand why some traps take years to close. Sarah Williams grew up on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. The kind of place where your neighbors brought you soup when you were sick and scolded your kids when they stepped out of line. Her mother worked night shifts as a nurse at Cook County Hospital. Her father drove buses for the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, waking up at 4 in the morning 6 days a week for 30 years. They weren't rich, but they were steady, faithful. The kind of people who showed up to church, to parent-teacher conferences, to community potlucks where someone always brought too much casserole and not enough plates. Sarah was quiet. Not shy exactly, just observant. She had dark brown eyes that seemed to take in everything, a soft voice that rarely rose above conversation level, and a mind sharp enough to cut glass. She read constantly, studied relentlessly, while other kids played in the street until the streetlights came on. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with textbooks spread around her like battle plans. Her parents prayed she'd have opportunities they never did. So when Sarah earned a full academic scholarship to Lincoln Prep Academy, a prestigious private school on the north side, they cried. Actually cried. Her mother called every relative within 3 states. Her father drove her to school every single morning for 4 years, even when it meant leaving an hour earlier than his shift required. Lincoln Prep was different. The building looked like something out of a magazine. Tall brick facade, ivy climbing the walls, marble floors in the lobby. The students arrived in cars that cost more than Sarah's parents made in a year. They wore designer clothes, carried the latest phones, talked about vacations to places Sarah had only seen in geography textbooks. And then there was Michael Sterling. Even at 14, Michael was the kind of boy people noticed. Tall for his age, with sharp features, light brown hair that always looked perfectly tousled, and a smile that could convince you to believe almost anything. He was the son of Robert Sterling, a billionaire real estate developer whose name was on half the high-rises downtown. Michael didn't just attend Lincoln Prep. His family had donated the new science wing. Everyone wanted to be near him. Boys wanted to be his friend. Girls wanted to be his girlfriend. Teachers gave him the benefit of the doubt even when he clearly hadn't done the reading. Sarah watched him from a distance. She sat 3 rows behind him in history, saw him in the cafeteria surrounded by a rotating cast of admirers, passed him in the hallways where he moved like he owned every square inch of polished floor. She never spoke to him, not once in 4 years, but she loved him, quietly, painfully, the way teenage girls love boys who will never notice them. She wrote his name in the margins of her notebooks and then scribbled it out. She memorized his schedule without meaning to. She felt her heart stutter every time he laughed, even when she wasn't part of the joke. It was foolish. She knew it was foolish. But knowing something and stopping it are 2 very different things. On Sundays, Sarah went to church with her parents. Greater Hope Baptist, a small brick building with chipped paint and a congregation that sang like they meant every word. After service, she'd walk 2 blocks to visit Amina Bello, an elderly Nigerian woman who lived on the 4th floor of Sarah's building. Amina was small and slow-moving, with silver hair wrapped in colorful scarves and hands that smelled like cocoa butter and ginger. She'd been a teacher in Lagos before immigrating to Chicago in the 70s. Now she spent her days reading, sewing, and telling stories to anyone who'd listen. Sarah loved those visits. Amina would brew strong tea with too much sugar and settle into her worn armchair. And then she'd begin. She told folktales, old ones, stories about tricksters and kings, loyal women and foolish men, traps set by pride and consequences delivered by fate. One story stayed with Sarah longer than the others. It was about a wealthy hunter who believed he was clever. He made a bet with his friends that he could trick a loyal woman into loving him, marry her, and then leave her once he'd won the wager. He played his part perfectly. He courted her. He made promises. He stood before her family and swore oaths he had no intention of keeping. But the trap he set for her became the trap that held him. When the truth came out, when the woman learned she'd been nothing but a game, the shame fell on him. His friends turned on him. His family disowned him. The woman walked away with her dignity intact, while he was left with nothing but the memory of what he destroyed for sport. Amina always ended the story the same way. When the trickster wins too easily, it is because the trap has not yet closed. Sarah didn't understand it back then. She was 17. She thought the story was just a story. She didn't realize she was already living inside it. 10 years passed. Sarah graduated from Lincoln Prep at the top of her class. She earned another scholarship, this time to Northwestern University. She studied pre-law, worked 2 part-time jobs, and graduated with honors. Then came law school at the University of Chicago, where she finished in the top 5%. She was brilliant. Everyone said so. Professors, classmates, potential employers. By the time she was 25, Sarah had her pick of job offers. Big firms, corporate law, 6-figure starting salaries with benefits packages that would have made her parents weep with pride. And then Michael Sterling re-entered her life. She hadn't seen him since high school, hadn't thought about him in years, or at least that's what she told herself. He'd gone to an Ivy League school naturally, studied business, traveled, built a reputation as a young entrepreneur with his father's money and his own ambition. By 28, Michael was the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a massive corporation dealing in real estate development, tech investments, and luxury hotels. His face appeared in business magazines. His name trended on social media. He was everything people expected him to be: successful, charming, untouchable. Sarah ran into him at a legal conference in downtown Chicago. She was there representing her law school, manning a booth for prospective students. He was there as a keynote speaker. She didn't recognize him at first. He'd grown into his features: sharper jaw, broader shoulders, confidence that radiated like heat. But when he smiled at her, that same smile from high school, something in her chest tightened. "Sarah Williams," he said, like her name was a pleasant surprise. "I thought that was you." She blinked. "Michael, you remember me." He seemed genuinely pleased. "I wasn't sure you would. We never really talked back at Lincoln, did we?" "No," she said carefully. "We didn't." He asked about her life, her career, her plans. He listened like every word mattered. When she mentioned she was considering job offers, he leaned in slightly. "What if you came to work for me?" She laughed. "Doing what?" "I need someone smart. Someone I can trust. A personal assistant, but not the coffee-fetching kind. I need someone who understands contracts, who can sit in meetings and know when someone's trying to cheat me. Someone who thinks 3 steps ahead." He paused. "I think that's you." Sarah hesitated. "I have offers from law firms." "I know, and you'd be great at that. But you'd also be one lawyer among hundreds, working 80-hour weeks on cases you don't care about for clients you'll never meet." His voice softened. "Work for me, and you'll be at the center of everything. You'll learn faster, see more, and when you're ready to move on, you'll have experience no law firm can offer." It sounded reasonable, strategic even. What she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was the bet. Michael's 2 closest friends, Mark Chun and Jason Torres, were both from old money. The kind of men who treated life like a game they'd already won. They'd been with Michael since college, and they shared his worst qualities: arrogance, entitlement, a belief that people were pieces on a board to be moved and manipulated. One night, 3 weeks before Michael offered Sarah the job, the 3 of them sat in a private club downtown, whiskey in hand, talking about women the way some men talk about cars. Jason said, "You ever think about that girl from high school? The scholarship kid?" Michael frowned. "Which one?" "Sarah something. Quiet. Smart. I saw her at that legal conference. She's still, I don't know, wholesome." Mark laughed. "You're not seriously interested." "I'm not," Jason said. "But you should be." Michael raised an eyebrow. "I bet you can't make her fall for you," Jason continued. "Actually fall. Marry you. The whole thing." Michael scoffed. "That's not even a challenge." "Then prove it," Mark said. 6 months. You get her to marry you, we each pay you 50,000. You fail, you pay us." Michael grinned. Not because he needed the money, but because he couldn't resist a game. "Deal." When Sarah accepted the job, she thought it was opportunity. Michael knew it was the opening move. Working for Michael was exactly what he'd promised. Intense, fast-paced, demanding. Sarah managed his schedule, reviewed contracts, sat in on meetings with investors and city officials. She was good at it. Better than good. Within weeks, Michael relied on her for decisions that affected millions of dollars. But the job bled into everything else. Late nights at the office became normal. Michael would call her at 10 p.m. with a question, then keep her on the phone for an hour talking about nothing important. He'd text her on weekends. He'd invite her to dinners that were technically work but felt personal. He'd ask about her life, her family, her dreams, and listen with an attention that felt almost intimate. Sarah noticed, of course, but she told herself it was professional. He was her boss. This was how high-level business worked. When she started seeing someone, a lawyer she'd met through a mutual friend, Michael's demeanor shifted. "You're dating?" he asked one evening, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Just someone I met. It's new." "Does he treat you well?" "He's nice." Michael leaned back in his chair. "Nice? That's a terrible word. You deserve more than nice, Sarah." 3 weeks later, the relationship fizzled. The guy said she worked too much, that she was always distracted, that it felt like she was never fully present. Sarah couldn't argue. He was right. Michael was there to comfort her. "His loss," he said simply. "Anyone who can't handle your ambition doesn't deserve you." It happened again with the next guy, and the one after that. Sarah started to believe she was the problem, that maybe she wasn't meant for relationships, that her career had to come first. She didn't realize Michael was quietly discouraging every man who came near her. A late-night call there. A work emergency that always seemed to happen right when she had plans. He was isolating her. Slowly, carefully. And then, 9 months after she started working for him, Michael asked her to dinner. Not a work dinner. A real one. "I've been thinking," he said as they sat in a quiet restaurant overlooking the Chicago River. "I don't want to lose you." Sarah set down her fork. "I'm not going anywhere. I mean as more than my assistant." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I know this might seem sudden, But it's not. I've been watching you, Sarah. The way you think. The way you care. You're not like anyone I've ever met. Her heart hammered. Michael, I'm in love with you. The words hit her like cold water. I know I shouldn't have let it happen, he continued. You work for me. It's complicated. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. Sarah stared at him. The boy she'd loved in silence for years. The man who'd become the center of her world without her even realizing it. Say something, he whispered. I don't know what to say. Say you'll give me a chance. She did. Amina's health had been declining. Sarah visited her less often, caught up in the whirlwind of Michael's attention. But one Sunday afternoon, 3 months into the relationship, she stopped by. Amina looked smaller than Sarah remembered. Frilier, but her eyes were still sharp. You look different, Amina said. I'm happy. Are you? Sarah hesitated. I think so. Amina poured tea with shaking hands. Tell me about him. Sarah did. She talked about Michael's charm, his intelligence, the way he made her feel seen. She talked about how he'd pursued her, how he'd said he loved her, how he wanted to marry her. Amina listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, the old woman was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. A man who rushes into love without humility is already planning his escape. Sarah frowned. What does that mean? It means love that comes too easily is often love that was never real. Amina reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. Be careful, child. Not all gifts are blessings. Sarah pulled her hand back gently. You don't know him. I know men like him. Sarah left earlier than usual that day. She told herself Amina was old, suspicious, stuck in the past. She didn't visit again. Michael proposed 4 months later. It was public. Grand. He rented out the top floor of a downtown hotel, invited 50 of their closest friends and colleagues, and got down on one knee in front of everyone. The ring was massive, 2 carats, flawless, the kind of ring that made people gasp. Sarah said yes because of course she said yes. The engagement made the society pages. Billionaire CEO to wed rising legal mind. Photos of them smiling, holding hands, looking like a fairy tale. Sarah's parents were cautious but hopeful. They liked Michael well enough, though her father said quietly one night, just make sure he treats you right, baby girl. He does, Dad. Good. Because if he doesn't, he'll answer to me. Sarah laughed. But something in her father's voice stayed with her. The night Michael proposed, after the champagne and congratulations and endless photos, he drove Sarah back to his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered diamonds. The apartment was silent, intimate, and for the first time in their relationship, Sarah felt completely certain. This was real. He loved her. She loved him. They made love that night, not rushed or performative, but slow, tender, as if they were sealing something deeper than a promise. Sarah fell asleep in his arms, her engagement ring catching the moonlight, feeling safer than she'd felt in years. She didn't know it would be one of the last peaceful nights she'd have for a very long time. The wedding planning consumed everything. Michael's mother, Angela Sterling, took over most of it. She hired the planner, chose the venue, Greater Hope Baptist Church at Sarah's insistence, and selected the flowers, the menu, the photographers. Sarah felt like a guest at her own wedding. Michael was increasingly distant. He claimed work was overwhelming. Big deals, international calls, investor meetings that ran late into the night. Sarah told herself it was temporary, that once they were married, things would settle. Her parents stretched their savings to contribute. They couldn't match the Sterling family's wealth, but they wanted to give their daughter something. Her mother bought Sarah's dress. Her father paid for the flowers at the reception. The church was packed on the wedding day. 300 people. Sarah's side was smaller, family, neighbors, old friends from the community. Michael's side was a parade of wealth. Business partners, socialites, people Sarah had only seen in magazines. She stood in the small room behind the sanctuary, her hands shaking as her mother adjusted her veil. You look beautiful, her mother whispered. I'm scared. Her mother's face softened. Every bride is scared, baby. It's normal. Is it? Before her mother could answer, the wedding coordinator knocked. It's time. Sarah walked down the aisle alone. Her father had wanted to walk her, but Michael had suggested she walk herself. A symbol of your independence, he'd said. Now, moving toward the altar with every eye on her, she felt anything but independent. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Michael stood waiting. He looked perfect, suit tailored to perfection, hair styled, smile confident, but his eyes were somewhere else. The pastor began. The traditional words, "Dearly beloved, gathered here today." Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. And then Michael's phone rang. He'd promised to turn it off. He'd promised. But the ringtone cut through the organ music like a scream. The pastor stopped. Michael pulled the phone from his pocket. Sarah saw his face change. Saw something flicker behind his eyes. Panic? Maybe, or excitement, or both. He looked at the screen, then at her. "I'm sorry," he said. 2 words. That's all he gave her. Then he turned and walked away. Sarah stood frozen. She heard the whispers start, heard someone gasp, heard her mother sob somewhere behind her. The doors closed behind Michael with a heavy thud. Silence. The pastor cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should." "No," Sarah said quietly. Her voice didn't sound like her own. "It's over." She turned, slowly, and walked back down the aisle. Every step felt like walking through deep water. Faces blurred. Voices faded. She made it to the side room before her legs gave out. Her mother found her on the floor, still in her dress, veil crumpled beside her, makeup running in black streaks down her face. "Baby, he left," Sarah whispered. "He just left." Michael drove to the address Vanessa had given him. Vanessa Cole, his first love, the one who got away, the girl he'd dated in college before she left him for someone richer, someone more established. He'd never fully gotten over her. When her name appeared on his phone screen during his wedding vows, every rational thought vanished. She'd said she was ready, ready to try again, ready to be with him. He abandoned his bride for a ghost. The address led to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, near the industrial district by the Calumet River. Michael's heart pounded as he parked. The building looked abandoned. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, weeds pushing through cracks in the concrete. This didn't feel right, but he was too far in to turn back now. He walked inside, calling Vanessa's name. The lights came on, fluorescent, harsh, blinding. Police, everywhere. At least a dozen officers in tactical gear, weapons drawn. Michael Sterling? One officer stepped forward, detective's badge clipped to his belt. "What is this?" "You're under arrest for suspicion of murder in the first degree and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute." "What? No. There's been a mistake." 2 officers grabbed his arms. Michael tried to pull away, but they forced him around, pressing him against his car. The metal was cold against his cheek. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "I didn't do anything. I was called here. Someone called me here." They weren't listening. One officer searched his car while another kept Michael restrained. Within minutes, they pulled out a black duffel bag from his trunk. "Got it," the officer called out. They unzipped it in front of him. Cocaine. Bags and bags of it. Packaged. Labeled. At least 2 kilograms. Michael's blood turned to ice. "That's not mine. I've never seen that before in my life." "Save it for your lawyer," the detective said, snapping handcuffs onto Michael's wrists. They were tight. Too tight. The metal bit into his skin. They dragged him out of the warehouse. News cameras were already there. Vans from every major Chicago station. Reporters with microphones. Photographers with cameras that clicked like a swarm of insects. "Mr. Sterling, did you kill Gregory Morrison? Were you dealing drugs to fund your company? Where is Vanessa Cole?" Michael couldn't process the questions. Gregory Morrison. He knew that name. A business rival who died 2 months earlier. Carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage. It had been ruled an accident. I didn't kill anyone, Michael shouted as they pushed him into the back of a police car. This is a setup. The door slammed shut. Through the window he saw the cameras. Saw the reporters talking into their microphones. His face blown up on their screens behind them. By the time Sarah's wedding reception would have started, Michael's arrest was the top story on every news channel in Chicago. The Cook County Jail was cold. The intake process took hours. They photographed him, fingerprinted him, strip-searched him, gave him an orange jumpsuit that smelled like industrial detergent and other men's sweat. They put him in a holding cell with 6 other men. The walls were cinder block. The toilet didn't have a seat. Someone had scratched hell into the metal bench. Michael sat in the corner trying to process what had just happened. He'd left his wedding for Vanessa, who'd lured him to a warehouse where police were waiting with planted evidence. This wasn't random. This was coordinated, planned. But by who? He asked for his phone call. They let him use a grimy wall-mounted phone that barely worked. He called his father first. Robert Sterling's assistant answered. Sterling residence. It's Michael. I need to speak to my father. It's an emergency. Mr. Sterling is unavailable. Tell him I've been arrested. Tell him I need a lawyer. Tell him. Mr. Sterling is aware of your situation. He's asked me to inform you that the family will not be providing legal or financial assistance at this time. Michael's hand tightened on the phone. Put him on. He's unavailable. Put my father on the phone right now. He doesn't wish to speak with you. Goodbye, Michael. The line went dead. Michael tried his mother next. Angela Sterling answered on the 3rd ring. Mother! How could you? Her voice was shaking. Tears or rage he couldn't tell. How could you humiliate this family? Abandon that poor girl? Get arrested for drugs and murder? I didn't do any of this. I was set up. The news showed the drugs, Michael. In your car. Your car. Someone planted them. And the murder investigation? Gregory Morrison? They found your DNA at his house. What? That's impossible. Your father and I built this family's name over decades. Decades. And you've destroyed it in a single day. Mother, please. I need help. I need a lawyer. Your father has released a statement to the press. We are disowning you, effective immediately. You will not have access to family funds. You will not use the Sterling name for legal defense. You are on your own. You can't do this. We already have. Lose this number. She hung up. Michael stood there, holding the dead phone, his entire world collapsing around him. A public defender was assigned to his case. Her name was Patricia Dominguez, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with gray streaking her dark hair and a briefcase held together with duct tape. She met him in a small concrete room that smelled like floor cleaner and desperation. Mr. Sterling, she said, sitting across from him. I'm going to be honest with you. This case is bad. I didn't do it. They found 2 kilograms of cocaine in your car. They have forensic evidence linking you to Gregory Morrison's house. DNA on a water glass. They have motive. Morrison was blocking your company's development deal in Naperville. And they have a witness who claims she saw you at Morrison's house the night he died. Who's the witness? Vanessa Cole. Michael's stomach dropped. She's lying. She lured me to that warehouse. This whole thing is a setup. Can you prove that? Michael realized he had nothing. No texts. No calls. Vanessa had contacted him through a burner phone. She called me during my wedding. Check the phone records. I will. But even if that's true, it doesn't prove she's lying about seeing you at Morrison's house. Because I was never at Morrison's house. Patricia looked at him with the exhausted patience of someone who'd heard every excuse. Look, the state is offering a plea deal. 20 years. You'd serve 12 with good behavior. 12 years for something I didn't do? Or we go to trial and you risk life in prison. Your choice. Michael put his head in his hands. The trial date was set for 3 months away. Those 3 months were the longest of Michael's life. He sat in Cook County Jail, unable to make bail. The judge had deemed him a flight risk given his resources. Except he didn't have resources anymore. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. His father had cut off all family money. Sterling Enterprises had fired him and appointed an interim CEO. Michael had gone from billionaire to nothing in 72 hours. His friends abandoned him. Mark and Jason didn't visit, didn't call. When Michael finally reached Mark through the jail phone system, Mark said simply, "Sorry, man, can't be associated with this," and hung up. Michael watched the news coverage obsessively. Every night, the jail's common room TV showed his face. Billionaire CEOs fall from grace. Chicago's most eligible bachelor now murder suspect. Wedding abandoned. Groom arrested. They interviewed his former employees, his business associates, random people on the street who had opinions about someone they'd never met. Everyone believed he was guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution had built an airtight case. They claimed Michael had killed Gregory Morrison to clear the way for a $200 million development deal. They claimed the cocaine was his side business, that despite his wealth, he'd been funding a drug operation for the thrill of it. They painted him as a spoiled rich kid who thought he was above the law. And the worst part? Michael couldn't completely deny that he'd been that person. Not a murderer or a drug dealer, but someone who'd treated life like a game he couldn't lose. Sarah haunted him. He thought about her constantly. The look on her face when he'd walked away. The sound of her dress rustling as she'd stood there, alone, in front of 300 people. He'd destroyed her for a phantom. One night, lying on his thin jail mattress, staring at the ceiling while his cellmate snored, Michael finally let himself think about the bet. $50,000 from Mark. $50,000 from Jason. To make Sarah fall in love and marry her. He'd won. Technically, she'd said yes. She'd loved him, and he'd thrown it away for Vanessa, for a woman he hadn't seen in years, for an obsession that had turned out to be a trap. The irony wasn't lost on him. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in February. The Cook County Courthouse was packed. Media circus. Protesters outside holding signs. Justice for Morrison. Lock him up. Michael sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit Patricia had borrowed from a client. He'd lost weight in jail. His face was gaunt. His hands shook. The prosecution was led by Assistant State's Attorney Jennifer Park, a sharp woman in her 30s with a reputation for destroying wealthy defendants. She presented the case methodically. The cocaine found in Michael's car. Chain of custody documented. No signs of tampering. The DNA evidence. Michael's fingerprints and DNA on a water glass found in Gregory Morrison's kitchen. Security footage showing a car matching Michael's near Morrison's house the night he died. And then Vanessa Cole took the stand. She looked different. Thinner. Nervous. She wore a conservative gray suit and minimal makeup. She didn't look at Michael once. "Ms. Cole," Jennifer Park said, "can you describe your relationship with the defendant?" "We dated in college. For 2 years. He never really got over me." "And did the defendant contact you recently?" "Yes, about 4 months ago. He said he was getting married, but he couldn't stop thinking about me. He asked if I'd be willing to see him again." Lies. Every word. But Vanessa sold them perfectly. "And did you see him the night Gregory Morrison died?" "Yes. Michael came to my apartment. He was agitated. Angry. He said Morrison was ruining everything. He said he was going to take care of it." "Did you believe him?" "I thought he meant legally. Through lawyers or business channels. I didn't think." She trailed off, wiping her eyes. "I didn't think he'd actually hurt anyone." Patricia cross-examined, but Vanessa held firm. She had an answer for everything. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Patricia did her best. She questioned the chain of custody on the cocaine. She pointed out the lack of motive. Michael was already wealthy. Why would he need drug money? She argued the DNA evidence could have been obtained any number of ways. But she couldn't overcome the sheer weight of evidence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with a verdict. On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find? Not guilty. Michael felt a flash of hope. On the charge of possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute, how do you find? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in state prison. Michael sat in shock as they led him away. Not guilty of murder, but guilty of drug trafficking he hadn't committed. 15 years. He was 28 years old. By the time he got out, he'd be 43. Sarah moved back home. She couldn't stay in the apartment she'd shared with Michael. Couldn't stomach the idea of unpacking wedding gifts or returning phone calls from people who wanted details she didn't have. Her parents welcomed her without questions. Her old bedroom looked exactly the same. Faded purple walls, posters from high school, books stacked on the desk. She stopped going to church. Couldn't face the pitying looks, the whispered prayers, the well-meaning questions. She took a job as a junior legal clerk at a small firm on the South Side. Low profile, barely above an internship. The pay was terrible, but no one there knew her story. She could disappear into the work. 2 months after the wedding that never happened, Sarah started feeling sick. First, she thought it was stress, grief, the physical manifestation of humiliation and heartbreak. But when the nausea didn't stop, when she missed her period, when she found herself crying at random moments for no clear reason, she bought a pregnancy test. Positive. She bought 3 more. All positive. Sarah sat on the bathroom floor of her childhood home, staring at those 4 plastic sticks lined up on the tile, and felt her entire world tilt again. The baby was Michael's. Had to be. She'd been with no one else. That night after his proposal, the only time they'd been together. One night. One moment of certainty and love and tenderness. And now she was pregnant with the child of a man who'd abandoned her at their wedding and was currently awaiting trial for murder and drug trafficking. She told no one at first. Not her parents. Not her friends. She walked around carrying this secret like a stone in her chest, trying to figure out what to do. She watched the news coverage of Michael's arrest. Read every article. Saw his mugshot plastered across every paper in Chicago. Part of her felt vindicated. He deserves this. He destroyed me. But another part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, felt something else. Doubt. She'd worked in law. She understood how cases were built. And something about the speed of Michael's arrest, the convenient timing, the perfectly documented evidence chain, it all felt too neat. One evening, 3 months pregnant and barely showing, Sarah finally went to see Amina. She climbed the stairs slowly, her hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. When she knocked, a young woman answered, Amina's niece. "I'm looking for Mrs. Bello," Sarah said. The woman's face fell. She passed. 6 weeks ago. Sarah felt the floor tilt. What? Heart failure. It was peaceful. She went in her sleep. Sarah thanked her and left. She didn't cry until she reached her car. She'd lost Amina without saying goodbye, without apologizing for ignoring her warnings, without asking for guidance about the impossible situation she now found herself in. That night, Sarah remembered the folktale, the wealthy hunter who bet he could trick love. She thought about Michael, about how he'd pursued her, how he'd isolated her, how he'd proposed publicly, surrounded by witnesses, as if he were performing rather than promising. And she thought about how quickly everything had fallen apart, how perfectly timed the arrest had been, how convenient that Vanessa had appeared at exactly the right moment. Someone had set a trap. But who? And why? Sarah started digging. She used her legal training, her access to databases, her connections from law school. She pulled court documents, found inconsistencies in the police report, noticed how quickly the news had cameras ready at the warehouse, how the evidence chain, though documented, had unusual gaps in timing. She discovered that the warehouse where Michael was arrested was owned by a shell corporation. She traced the ownership through 3 layers of companies before hitting a wall. She found Gregory Morrison's autopsy report, carbon monoxide poisoning, ruled accidental, but the levels in his blood were higher than what you'd get from sitting in a running car in a garage. It looked more like someone had pumped pure CO into his house. She pulled phone records. Michael's call log showed Vanessa's call during the wedding. But Vanessa's phone records, obtained through a legal records request, showed no outgoing call to Michael at that time. Someone had spoofed the call. For months of research, done in secret while her pregnancy progressed and the trial date approached, led Sarah to one inescapable conclusion. Michael had been set up. Systematically. Professionally. But why? She kept digging. And then she found the messages. Through a former classmate who worked in tech security, Sarah obtained access to a deleted group chat between Mark Chun and Jason Torres. The messages went back months. Mark, Sterling's getting married. Can you believe it? Jason, to that scholarship girl from high school. Sarah something. Mark, he actually fell for her. Jason, or he's just better at the game than we thought. Mark, either way, we're out 100K. Jason, not if we change the rules. The messages continued. Planning. Scheming. They'd contacted Vanessa and offered her $200,000 to lure Michael away from his wedding. They'd worked with a dirty cop, someone Mark knew from college, to plant the cocaine. They'd killed Gregory Morrison and framed Michael for it. Why? Because Michael had won the bet, had actually convinced Sarah to marry him. And Mark and Jason couldn't stand to lose. But more than that, they were jealous. Michael had everything. The company, the wealth, the success. And now he had love. So they'd decided to take it all away. Sarah sat in her tiny bedroom, 7 months pregnant, staring at the screen, feeling rage burn through her body like fever. These men had destroyed Michael. Not out of justice, not even out of greed, out of pure, petty jealousy. And Michael was about to spend 15 years in prison for crimes he didn't commit. She could walk away, let him rot. He'd earned some form of punishment for what he'd done to her. But this wasn't justice. And the child growing inside her deserved better than a father imprisoned for crimes he didn't commit. Sarah made a decision. She called Michael's public defender. Ms. Dominguez, this is Sarah Williams. I have evidence. Evidence that proves Michael Sterling was framed. The trial was already underway. 3 weeks in, the prosecution had rested their case. Patricia was in the middle of presenting the defense. What kind of evidence? Patricia asked, skeptical. Messages. Proof that Mark Chun and Jason Torres planned everything. Proof they paid Vanessa Cole. Proof they killed Gregory Morrison and planted evidence to frame Michael. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It might. If it was obtained illegally. It was obtained through legal channels. I have documentation. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Why are you helping him? He's the groom who abandoned you. Sarah looked down at her belly. 7 months. The baby kicked, a firm press against her ribs. Because he's guilty of a lot of things, she said quietly. But not the things he's being charged with. Do you understand what this will cost you? The media will destroy you. Your community will turn on you. You'll be the woman who defended the man who humiliated her. I know. Why? Because it's right. Patricia came to Sarah's apartment the next day. She reviewed every piece of evidence. The messages, the phone records, the corporate documents tracing ownership of the warehouse, the autopsy report with its anomalies. This changes everything, she said finally. Will the judge allow it? I'll file an emergency motion. If this evidence is legitimate, if it holds up to scrutiny, we can get a retrial or at least a mistrial. How long? Weeks, maybe months. It depends on how fast we can verify everything and how cooperative the judge is. Sarah nodded. Then we start now. The community turned on her. Friends stopped calling. People at church avoided her. Her mother pulled her aside one Sunday and said, "Baby, are you sure about this? That man broke your heart." "I know." "Then why?" Sarah placed her mother's hand on her swollen belly. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent. Her mother's eyes widened. "Oh, baby. It's his. Does he know?" "No. And I'm not telling him until this is over. What if it doesn't work? What if he still goes to prison? Then I'll raise this child alone. But at least I'll know I tried to do the right thing." Her father just hugged her. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The breakthrough came when the FBI got involved. Patricia's motion had caught the attention of a federal prosecutor who'd been investigating corruption in the Chicago Police Department. The dirty cop Mark knew turned out to be under surveillance for unrelated crimes. When confronted with Sarah's evidence and the FBI's interest, the cop flipped. He confessed to planting the cocaine. He confessed to falsifying evidence at Morrison's house. He gave up Mark and Jason in exchange for a reduced sentence. Then they found Vanessa. She'd fled to Arizona, living under a different name. When federal agents showed up at her door, she broke down, confessed everything. The money, the fake phone call, the lies on the stand. She agreed to testify against Mark and Jason in exchange for immunity. The judge declared a mistrial. Michael was released on bail, posted by an anonymous donor. He later learned it was Sarah's father, who'd taken out a second mortgage on his house. Michael walked out of Cook County Jail on a cold morning in May. He'd been locked up for 7 months. He was thinner, quieter. Something behind his eyes had changed. The media swarmed him. He gave a brief statement thanking his lawyer and the individual whose courage and integrity made this possible. He didn't say Sarah's name, but everyone knew. Michael went to a hotel. Not the penthouse he'd owned, that had been sold to pay legal debts. A modest room at a Holiday Inn near O'Hare. He sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Everything was gone. The company, the money, the reputation. His parents wouldn't speak to him. His friends had tried to destroy him. The only person who'd saved him was the woman he'd hurt most. He'd heard she'd given up the evidence. His lawyer had told him. But he hadn't seen her, hadn't spoken to her. He didn't deserve to. 3 days after his release, Michael received a letter, hand-delivered to the hotel. The handwriting was familiar. Michael, I need to see you. There's something you need to know. I'll be at Millennium Park tomorrow at 2 p.m., near the Cloud Gate sculpture. Sarah. Michael arrived 15 minutes early. Millennium Park was crowded with tourists and families enjoying the spring weather. The Cloud Gate sculpture, the bean as everyone called it, reflected the skyline in its polished surface. He stood at a distance, waiting, his heart hammering. And then he saw her. Sarah walked slowly through the crowd. She wore a simple blue dress and a cardigan. Her hair was pulled back, and she was very, very pregnant. Michael's breath stopped. She reached him, standing a few feet away. The space between them felt like miles. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." He couldn't stop staring. "You're 8 months. Is it?" "Yours." "Yes." The world tilted. Michael sat down hard on a nearby bench. Sarah sat beside him, leaving space between them. "The night I proposed," Michael said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were in jail facing 15 years. Because I wasn't sure you deserved to know. Because I didn't know what to do." Michael put his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry. I know. I don't mean just for this. I mean for everything. For the bet. For treating you like a game. For walking away at the wedding. For," his voice broke, "for all of it." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Around them, children played. Tourists took selfies with the bean. Life continued, indifferent to their pain. "I read the messages," she said finally. "Between Mark and Jason. I know about the bet. 50,000 each." Michael flinched. "Sarah, was I ever real to you? Or was it all just part of the game?" He looked at her. Really looked at her. Her dark eyes so familiar. Her face, older now than when they'd been teenagers, marked by what he'd put her through. "At first it was a game," he admitted. "I'm not going to lie to you. When Mark and Jason made the bet, I took it because I thought it would be easy. I thought I could charm you, marry you, collect the money, and move on with my life." Sarah's jaw tightened. "But then," Michael continued, "then I got to know you, actually know you, and I realized you were nothing like I remembered. You were brilliant and kind, and you saw through all my charm. You made me work for every conversation. You challenged me, and somewhere along the way, I forgot about the bet." When did I forget? When did you actually start to care?" Michael thought back. There was a night about 5 months in. We were working late. Some deal was falling apart. I was stressed. You made me tea, real tea, not the expensive stuff from my office. Just regular tea with too much sugar. And you told me that sometimes the deals that fall apart are the ones that would have hurt us later. You said, "Not every loss is a failure." He smiled slightly at the memory. I realized in that moment that you were the only person in my life who didn't want something from me, who wasn't impressed by my money or my name, who actually saw me and stayed anyway, and I think that's when it stopped being a game. But you still left me at the altar. I did, because I'm an idiot, because when Vanessa called, I panicked. She'd been my obsession for years, this idea that if I could just get her back, I'd finally be complete. But the second I walked out of that church, I knew I'd made the worst mistake of my life. You didn't come back. I know. I was arrested 20 minutes later. But Sarah, even if I hadn't been arrested, I don't know if I would have had the courage to come back. I don't know if I would have been able to face what I'd done. Sarah looked down at her hands, at the engagement ring she'd long since removed. You destroyed me, she said softly. You made me believe I was worth loving. And then you proved I wasn't. You are worth loving. You're worth everything. I'm the one who wasn't worthy. Wasn't. I don't know if I am now either, but I'm trying to be. Sarah stood slowly, her hand on her belly. Michael stood too. I didn't help you because I forgive you, she said. I helped you because you didn't deserve to go to prison for crimes you didn't commit. And because this baby deserves a father who isn't locked away for 15 years. I understand. But I'm not taking you back. I'm not picking up where we left off. That version of us is dead. I know. I'm going to have this baby. You can be involved if you want. But on my terms. You don't get to control my life anymore. You don't get to manipulate me or isolate me or play games with my heart. I wouldn't. I won't. I don't trust you yet. I'll earn it. However long it takes. Sarah studied his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. She didn't find it. My parents' house. Sunday dinners. If you want to be part of this baby's life, you start there. You show up. You be present. You prove you're not the man who walked away. I'll be there. And Michael? If you hurt me again, if you betray this child, there won't be a third chance. I understand. She walked away slowly, one hand supporting her lower back, moving through the crowd like someone carrying the weight of the world. Michael watched her go, feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Michael spent the next month rebuilding his life from scratch. He sold everything he had left. A watch, some clothes, a few pieces of art he'd stored at a friend's place before the arrest. He used the money to rent a small studio apartment in Pilsen, a working-class neighborhood on the west side. He got a job at a construction company. Manual labor, 40 hours a week at $15 an hour. His coworkers didn't know who he was, didn't care about his past. They taught him how to frame walls, lay concrete, read blueprints. It was honest work, hard work, the kind that left him exhausted and sore but oddly satisfied. On Sunday, he showed up at Sarah's parents' house. Her father answered the door. He was a big man, solid, with gray in his hair and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. Mr. Williams, Michael said, thank you for posting my bail. I'll pay you back. Every cent. It might take a while, but come in, her father said. The house was small but warm. Family photos on the walls. The smell of something cooking in the kitchen. Gospel music playing softly on a radio. Sarah was in the living room, sitting on the couch with her feet up. She looked tired. Beautiful but tired. Hi, Michael said. You came. I said I would. Sarah's mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked Michael up and down with an expression that could have frozen Lake Michigan. So you're the one, she said. Yes, ma'am. The one who left my daughter standing at the altar in front of 300 people. Yes, ma'am. The one who broke her heart. Yes, ma'am. She studied him for a long moment. Then she said, dinner's in 20 minutes. You can set the table. Plates are in the cabinet by the sink. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Michael set the table carefully. 6 places. Sarah's parents, Sarah, her younger brother who was home from college, an aunt who lived nearby, and himself. Dinner was pot roast with potatoes and carrots, cornbread, green beans, and sweet tea. The kind of meal Michael's family had never eaten. They'd had private chefs who made deconstructed this and foam-topped that. This was real food, made with care, meant to nourish. They said grace. Michael bowed his head and listened to Mr. Williams thank God for the food, for family, for second chances. When he said second chances, his voice was pointed. The meal was quiet at first. Awkward. Sarah's brother kept glancing between Michael and Sarah like he was watching a tennis match. The aunt asked Michael polite questions about his job, his apartment, his plans. Michael answered honestly. Construction work. A studio in Pilsen. No real plans beyond showing up and trying to be better. What happened to your company? The aunt asked. I was forced out. The board appointed a new CEO. I signed over my shares as part of the settlement to avoid further legal action. So you're broke, Sarah's brother said. Marcus, Sarah's mother warned. I'm just saying. Dude went from billionaire to broke in like 6 months. Yes, Michael said. I did. And honestly, I probably deserved it. That got everyone's attention. Michael set down his fork. I spent my whole life thinking money made me important, that I could buy or manipulate my way through anything. I treated people like they were disposable, like love was a game I could win. He looked at Sarah. I hurt the one person who actually gave a damn about me, and I did it because I was too arrogant to recognize what I had. The table was silent. Losing everything taught me what I should have learned a long time ago, that the only things that matter are the things you can't buy. Family, integrity, love. And I'm not asking anyone here to forgive me or trust me. I know I have to earn that, but I'm going to try, for as long as it takes. Sarah's father leaned back in his chair. You ever hit my daughter? No, sir. Never. You ever cheat on her? Besides the mess with that Vanessa woman? No, sir. Vanessa was... I never had a relationship with her during my time with Sarah. She was just an obsession I couldn't let go of. But I never actually cheated. You drink. Socially. I'm not an alcoholic, if that's what you're asking. Drugs? No, sir. Despite what I was charged with, I've never used or dealt drugs. Mr. Williams nodded slowly. You left her at the altar. You understand that's the kind of thing people don't forget? That every person in our church, in our neighborhood, in our family, watched my baby girl get humiliated. I understand, sir. So what makes you think you deserve a second chance? Michael looked at him directly. I don't, sir. I don't deserve it. But I'm hoping for it anyway, because that baby Sarah's carrying is mine. And whether Sarah ever forgives me or not, whether we ever have a relationship or not, I want to be a father to that child. A real father. Not like mine was to me. What kind of father was yours? The kind who only cared about business. Who measured love in stock portfolios and real estate holdings. Who cut me off the second I became an inconvenience. Michael's voice was steady. I don't want to be that. I want to be the kind of father who shows up, who stays, who loves his kid more than his ego. Sarah's mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Mr. Williams extended his hand across the table. Then you better mean that. Michael shook it. I do, sir. After dinner, Sarah asked Michael to take a walk with her. They walked slowly through the neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Kids played basketball in a driveway. An elderly couple sat on their porch. You did good in there, Sarah said. Your family is kind. They're protective. There's a difference. Fair enough. They walked in silence for a while. Sarah stopped occasionally to catch her breath. The baby was big now, pressing on her lungs and ribs. When are you due? Michael asked. 3 weeks. Maybe less. She's measuring big. She? Sarah smiled slightly. Girl. They told me at the ultrasound. You're having a daughter. Michael felt something crack open in his chest. We're having a daughter. I'm having a daughter. I don't know what you are yet. Can I ask you something? Maybe. Why did you really help me? You said it was about the baby deserving a father. But you didn't know you were pregnant when you started investigating. You'd already started digging before you found out. Sarah stopped walking. She looked at the sky, at the deepening colors. Because I was angry, she said finally. Because I watched them destroy you on the news and something about it felt wrong. Not wrong like you didn't deserve punishment. Wrong like the punishment didn't fit the crime. You knew I deserved something. Of course you did. You humiliated me. You used me. But murder, drug trafficking, that wasn't you. You're selfish and manipulative and you treated love like a game. But you're not violent. You're not a criminal. How did you know? Because I knew you. Really knew you. I saw you at 3 a.m. when you were stressed about a deal. I saw you be kind to the cleaning staff when you thought no one was watching. I saw you visit your mother in the hospital when she had pneumonia. Even though you claimed you didn't care. Sarah looked at him. You're not a good man, Michael. Not yet. But you're not a monster either. I want to be better. Then be better. Not for me. Not even for the baby. For yourself. They walked back as streetlights flickered on. One by one. Illuminating the path home. 3 weeks later, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Sarah's water broke. Her mother called Michael. He was at her parents' house in 15 minutes. Still in the clothes he'd worn to bed. Driving the beat-up Honda Civic he'd bought for $800. The drive to Northwestern Memorial Hospital took 20 minutes. Sarah's contractions were 6 minutes apart. She breathed through them, her hand gripping Michael's so hard he thought his bones might break. You're doing great, he said. Don't patronize me. I'm not. You are. I'm terrified. Me too. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Stay, please. I know we're not together. I know I said I didn't trust you. But I don't want to do this alone. I'm not going anywhere. Michael stayed the entire time. He held Sarah's hand through contractions. He got her ice chips when she asked. He rubbed her back when the pain got too intense. He called the nurse when Sarah needed more pain medication. Sarah's mother was there too, on Sarah's other side, coaching her through breathing exercises and whispering prayers. At 4:23 p.m., after 2 hours of pushing, their daughter was born. She came out screaming, red-faced and furious, weighing 7 pounds and 4 ounces. The nurse placed her on Sarah's chest. Sarah started crying immediately. She's perfect, Sarah whispered. She's so perfect. Michael couldn't speak. He just stared at this tiny human, her eyes squeezed shut, her fists waving, her entire face scrunched up in outrage at being born. His daughter. Do you want to hold her? Sarah asked. Michael nodded, not trusting his voice. The nurse showed him how to support the head. Michael took his daughter in his arms, this impossibly small person who weighed almost nothing, and felt his entire world reorganize itself around her. Hi, he whispered. Hi, baby girl. I'm your dad. She opened her eyes. They were dark gray, unfocused, searching. I'm going to do better, he told her. I'm going to be better. For you. Sarah watched them, exhausted and overwhelmed and filled with something she couldn't quite name. What do we name her? Michael asked. Sarah had thought about this. For months, she'd gone through names, searching for the right one. Amina Grace, she said, after someone who tried to warn me, who saw the truth before I did. Michael looked up, understanding. The woman who told the stories. Yes. Amina Grace Sterling Williams? Sarah hesitated. Just Williams for now. Michael nodded. He understood. He hadn't earned the right to have his name attached to hers yet. Amina Grace Williams, he said softly. Welcome to the world. The first 6 months of Amina's life were chaos. Sarah moved back into her own apartment, a small 2-bedroom in Hyde Park, near the university. Michael helped her move, helped her set up the nursery, helped her assemble a crib that came with instructions in 3 languages, none of them helpful. He came by every day after work, still in his construction clothes, smelling like sawdust and sweat. He'd hold Amina while Sarah showered or napped or just sat in silence. He'd change diapers, make bottles, walk the floor at 2 a.m. when Amina had colic and wouldn't stop crying. He never complained, never asked for more than Sarah was willing to give. Slowly, day by day, Sarah began to trust him again. Not all at once. Not with any grand gesture or dramatic moment. But in the small things. The way he showed up consistently. The way he listened when she talked. The way he held their daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. 6 months after Amina was born, Sarah invited Michael to stay for dinner after one of his visits. She made spaghetti, nothing fancy, just something simple. They ate at her small kitchen table, Amina asleep in her bassinet nearby. "I got offered a supervisor position," Michael said, "at the construction company. That's great. It's more money. Not a lot, but enough that I could help more. With Amina. With whatever you need. You already help. I want to do more." Sarah twirled pasta around her fork. "I've been thinking about going back to work. Properly, I've been offered a position at a civil rights law firm. It's what I always wanted to do. Before everything. You should take it. It would mean long hours. Cases that matter but don't pay much. I'd need help with Amina. I'll help. Whatever you need. Michael, you work construction full-time. I'll figure it out. Cut back my hours. Switch to part-time. My supervisor said he'd work with me if I needed flexibility." Sarah set down her fork. "Why are you doing this? What do you mean? You could walk away, pay child support, see Amina every other weekend. That's what most men in your position would do." "I'm not most men. Clearly. But why? Why are you really doing this?" Michael was quiet for a long time. He looked at Amina, sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling. "Because the day she was born, I held her and I realized something. Every choice I'd made in my life up until that point had been selfish. Every single one. I chose wealth over integrity. I chose winning over kindness. I chose pride over love." He looked at Sarah. "And those choices cost me everything. My family. My company. You. You can't undo the past. I know. But I can choose differently now. I can be the father she deserves. I can be the man you deserved all along." He paused. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I'm just asking you to let me keep showing up. Keep proving that I've changed." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That I'll let you back in. That I'll believe you've changed. And then you'll hurt me again." "I won't." "You don't know that." "You're right. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'll probably mess up. Make mistakes. But I can promise that I will never intentionally hurt you again. That I will never abandon you or Amina. That I will show up every day. For as long as you let me." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I need time. Take all the time you need." Time passed. Autumn turned to winter. Amina grew. She started smiling, then laughing, then babbling nonsense syllables that sounded almost like words. Michael was there for all of it. He was there when she rolled over for the first time. When she started eating solid foods and made a face of pure betrayal at the taste of pureed peas. When she said her first word, "Dada," and Michael cried actual tears. He was there on the hard days too. When Amina had an ear infection and screamed for hours. When Sarah was exhausted and overwhelmed and snapped at him unfairly. When money was tight and the heating in Sarah's apartment broke in January. Michael fixed the heating himself. Watched YouTube videos. Bought parts with money he'd been saving. Spent 6 hours in the freezing cold basement until he got it working. Sarah stood at the top of the basement stairs, holding Amina, watching him work. This was not the man who'd left her at the altar. That man wouldn't have known how to fix a furnace. Wouldn't have gotten his hands dirty. Wouldn't have persevered through 6 hours of frustration and frozen fingers. "Got it," Michael called up, his voice echoing in the basement. The furnace kicked on with a groan and a rumble. Sarah felt warmth start to flow through the vents. When Michael came upstairs, his hands were black with grease, his face smudged with dirt, his breath fogging in the cold. "Thank you," Sarah said. "Of course. Michael." "Yeah. Stay for dinner. And maybe stay after. We can watch a movie or something." He looked at her carefully. "Like a date. Like two people who share a daughter, trying to figure out what comes next." "I can do that." They ordered Chinese food, put Amina to bed together, sat on the couch with a careful distance between them, and started a movie neither of them really watched. Halfway through, Sarah leaned against him. Michael froze, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. "I'm still scared," Sarah whispered. "I know, but I think I want to try." "Try what?" "Us. Again. Differently this time." Michael turned to look at her. "Are you sure?" "No, but I think you've earned the chance." He kissed her forehead. Gentle, reverent. "I won't waste it." They took it slow. Dates that ended at reasonable hours. Conversations that didn't avoid the hard topics. It wasn't easy. There were fights, setbacks, moments when Sarah wondered if she was making a mistake. But Michael kept showing up, kept being honest, kept proving that change wasn't just possible, it was happening. A year after Amina was born, Michael proposed again. Not in front of 50 people. Not with a massive ring or grand gestures. He proposed in Sarah's living room at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, after they'd put Amina to bed and were cleaning up toys from the floor. "Marry me," he said. Sarah dropped the stuffed elephant she was holding. "What?" "Marry me. For real this time. Not because of a bet. Not because I'm trying to win something. Marry me because I love you. Because I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you." "Michael, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I destroyed the first one. But Sarah, you and Amina are my entire world. You saved me, not just from prison, from myself. And I want to spend every day for the rest of my life being the man you both deserve." He pulled out a ring. Simple, small, nothing like the ostentatious thing he'd given her before. "It's not much," he said. "I'm not rich anymore. I'm just a guy who works construction and comes home smelling like sawdust. But I love you. God, I love you. And I'm asking you to let me love you for the rest of our lives." Sarah looked at the ring, at Michael, at the life they'd been building together, piece by careful piece. "Yes," she said. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Michael slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her. Really kissed her. The kind of kiss that felt like a promise. They got married 6 months later. Not at Greater Hope Baptist in front of 300 people. At the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon, with just their parents, Amina, and a judge who'd married 1,000 couples and looked mildly bored through the whole thing. Sarah wore a simple white dress she'd bought at Macy's. Michael wore the only suit he owned, bought secondhand from Goodwill. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Michael cupped Sarah's face in his hands. "I'm not leaving this time," he whispered. "You better not." He kissed her while Amina squealed and her parents cried and the judge checked his watch. They went to Lou Malnati's for pizza afterward. Had a small celebration with too much food and too little room. Amina got tomato sauce in her hair. Michael's father-in-law told embarrassing stories. Sarah's mother cried happy tears into her napkin. It was perfect. Not because it was grand or expensive or Instagram-worthy. And in the end, that's all anyone could ask for. Not perfection, just persistence. Not a fairy tale, just an honest story about flawed people trying to do better. Love isn't a game you can win. It's not a bet or a trophy or a prize to be claimed. It's a choice, made every day, in the small moments, in the hard moments, in the moments when it would be easier to walk away but you choose to stay. Michael had walked away once, but he'd spent every day since then choosing to stay. In the old stories, the trickster always believes he is clever, until the truth begins to speak without permission. Michael Sterling learned this the hard way. He thought love was a game he could win with charm and manipulation. He thought loyalty was something he could take for granted. He was wrong. The trap he set for Sarah became the trap that held him. His friends betrayed him. His family abandoned him. He lost everything: money, reputation, freedom. But in losing everything, he found something he'd never had before: humility. And through that humility came change. Real change. The kind that takes years and hurts like hell and requires you to face every ugly thing you've ever done. Sarah learned something too. She learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. That giving someone a second chance doesn't make you naive, it makes you brave. She learned that the strongest love isn't the kind that comes easy. It's the kind that survives betrayal, rebuilds trust brick by brick, and chooses to stay even when leaving would be justified. Love is not a game. Loyalty is not weakness. And those who gamble with hearts often lose everything else. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes they learn from the loss. Sometimes they become better. Sometimes the story doesn't end with the trap closing. Sometimes it ends with the trickster learning to be honest. With the loyal woman learning to protect herself. With both of them finding something neither expected. A second chance, earned through pain and persistence and the daily choice to do better. That's not a fairy tale. That's life. Messy, complicated, imperfect life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and work very hard, it's enough. If this story moved you or you find it interesting and worth your time, make sure to subscribe and please give this video a thumbs up so more people can see it.